welcome to our second episode. My name is Togo.
My name is Naman.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about the 2018 movie Burning by the director Lee Chang-dong, and we're just going to talk about our experiences with the film, how we process the film, and talk about a little bit of the director and the characters, etc.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on our second episode. If you listened to our first one, we apologize for the... Thank you. We apologize for the sort of fast-paced and glitchy editing, but I guess that's what the podcast gods wanted from us. So yeah, do you want to talk about your impression of when you first watched and also when you rewatched Burning?
So when I first watched the film, I think I really enjoyed the aspects of kind of being taken by surprise, all the kind of things that gets said in the movie and then that gets negated afterwards, and you don't know which one was real, like was the cat real or was it not. So all those questions I really enjoyed watching, but I didn't really kind of like process or think too deeply about it. And I obviously really enjoyed that dancing scene of Haimi dancing in the sunrise to the Miles Davis score. I've found like that score to be used in other movies too, and I was kind of really just also curious as to why the director chose that score specifically for that scene. Did he knew about these other movies that used it in the scenes of like just woman kind of looking on the lookout for something? So I had those kind of thought processes, but I did really truly enjoy my experience.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so I probably watched it in 2019 for the first time, and ever since then, the movie's always kind of been in the back of my mind in certain situations. I felt like whatever the protagonist Jing-soo has experienced was kind of like, in a kind of dreamlike quality, it was also kind of my memories. I think the movie has set that sort of impression in me, and that's what I really like about it. On top of that, I like the way they explore modern Korean culture, and I think the characters are really interesting. I feel like there's certain qualities about them that maybe I can also relate to a little bit. And just the fact that I could see myself as Jing-soo and just almost feeling like I've met this girl and like she was this like really free and this manic spirit. I somehow feel like I went through that experience. And with Steven Yeun's character Ben, it just makes me feel like, well, I don't like that character. And
first of all, let me say that.
Yeah. In my second rewatch, it just made me wonder, hey, like, I hope I don't come off that way to people, because in a way, like, Steven Yeun's character is someone who's well-traveled, and he comes back to Korea potentially from being in other parts of the world. And it just made me think, what if I go to my home country and start talking about all these things I saw, and it just comes off as this really snobby. Yeah.
I really liked your description of how it's kind of like reflective of how memories are formed in us. Like when I recall my childhood memories, sometimes I often question like which parts are real. Like I get that gut feeling that yes, it's mostly real, but sometimes like some of the memories are really vivid and really specific that I almost feel like was that my imagination, or did it really happen? And I guess it just kind of alludes to the fact that our perceptions of like if we experience the same event, our perceptions of it is so different, and every time we recall our memories, we construct it like in different ways. So that really gets translated so well into this film. It's kind of crazy how at one point the director really was able to capture that, like this fleeting essence of memory and like looking back on experiences.
I guess the suspense aspect of this movie was really expertly done. What I thought was that, in contrast to more traditional suspense thrillers, such as more Hitchcock-style thriller. This movie, instead of building from this huge array of clues into like smaller and smaller and then finally coming to reach a conclusion, this movie kind of goes the other way, right? You start with kind of a relatively normal plot, and then like it just keeps on growing and growing until the mysteries just become like
even bigger mystery.
Yeah, you can't even hold on to them anymore. So I kind of like the way they turned this movie into something that is, I guess, the opposite of what you'd normally expect from a suspense movie.
Yeah, and I remember reading that the director really didn't want to explain the film too much, because he said that because he is a former author, I think he still writes, I'm not too sure, but he was definitely a former author before he transitioned into making films. So he was saying that if I wanted to explain something to someone, I would just write about it. Like, why would I bother with making movies, right? The thing about movies is that they can capture mystery in a way that I guess writing can capture, but it's just direct. And I really like that you don't get a conclusion, and then it kind of gives you a space to think about your own experiences.
Yeah, I think this quality also gives the movie sort of dreamlike, was it in your memory type of experience.
Yeah.
And I guess we should quickly summarize the movie. So Burning is set in South Korea, and it follows the protagonist Jung-soo, who is an aspiring novelist, and he lives in a small town where his family owns a cattle farm. It seems like he lives in the northern part of South Korea, where they're really located close to North Korea. And in the beginning of the movie, he meets an old friend or an old classmate, an acquaintance, Hae-mi, who's working as sort of like this Abercrombie model in front of a store.
And like invites people in,
Yeah.
advertises what's going on in the store.
And throughout the movie, Jung-soo eventually ends up getting feelings for Hae-mi, but all of that is disrupted by when Hae-mi goes to Africa, and she brings back this friend who's played by Steven Yeun, this guy Ben.
His name is Ben. Super suited name.
Yeah.
Well chosen name.
And Ben is this guy who's really different from Jung-soo. He seems like he's a lot wealthier, even at such a young age. And
it's like the exact opposite.
Yeah, he's the exact opposite of Jung-soo. And he's kind of a creepy guy. He says stuff like, I like burning greenhouses for fun. It's the only thing that, makes me feel stuff. And in the middle of the movie, Hae-mi actually disappears. And thanks to all the evidence, Jung-soo reaches the conclusion that Ben killed Hae-mi because of, his weird collection of women's items in his bathroom.
Yeah, and then the cat.
The cat.
Yeah.
And Jung-soo has all this rage riled up towards Ben, and at the end of the movie, he kills Ben. So yeah, also we should note that throughout this movie, there's this common theme of discussing between two different types of hunger that Hae-mi brings up. And she distinguishes between the great hunger and then the little hunger that is, I think, something that community in Kenya distinguish between.
Yeah, they have like a dance for it, like a dance to express the different types of hunger.
And the little hunger is something that's more primal. I guess it's about satisfying your immediate physical needs, right? You need like food, you need shelter, but then the great hunger is more about satisfying your spiritual or your existential needs. Yes, where it satisfy your cravings for
finding a meaning.
Finding a meaning in life, and
or
so on.
Creating your own meaning.
So speaking of the characters, what is your impression of a guy like Ben?
A guy like Ben, obviously there's definitely guys like Ben. Definitely don't want to go on a date with him. To me he's just way too empty, like inside, to even enjoy simple things. Not even simple, just enjoy life. I don't think he gets enjoyment out of life, as much enjoyment out of life as I do. So Yeah, so definitely not a type of guy to date, but it's interesting. Like he's an interesting character. Almost, I remember you said his character, like in the movie, is almost like caricature, right?
Yeah, he
He kind
seems
of gives
like
that
a
vibe.
like not a real person to me.
Yeah, exactly. Almost like culmination of that kind of people like taken to a little bit of extreme to kind
Yeah.
of address that point, stress that point a little bit more strongly.
Yeah. I said that because to me he is sometimes condescending to a degree of not being socially
Yeah.
acceptable. And he says stuff like I don't work, I play and stuff like that.
Yeah, he says like even if I tell you, you wouldn't understand.
Oh yeah.
That's his attitude about like thing is that like the people like Jungsu or Haimi is just not gonna understand the kind of the plane of existence that he lives on, and he doesn't want to bother explaining it to them, so he has that kind of attitude. So Ben as a guy is really empty. Really, he's deep inside. There's just so much void that he himself doesn't know how to fill. So
Yeah.
he's just stuck with it.
I think his attitude towards Haimi is that he sees her not as like a person that he's actually friends
Yeah.
with, but someone that he can almost collect, right? Someone that he can like entertain himself with.
Yeah.
And the way he describes her is something like, no, I think Haimi says he thinks I'm interesting. He likes people like me or something like that.
Yeah, he finds people like me interesting. Yeah, so it's almost like how Ben approaches people, or like how he treats other people, is as like a social experiment. He's just there to kind of analyze, and that's how he views his interactions with other people. Is just kind of like an experiment that
Yeah.
he's observing them. So it's always like, what are they gonna be exciting? Are they gonna be fun? That's what he thinks. He never thinks about what he's bringing into that two-person interaction.
Yeah.
It's really like one-sided kind of amusement. He's just wants to be amused, and that's all he really wants in
Yeah.
life.
And he even says it himself. He says, I think the only time he feels the most is when he's burning those greenhouses, right? Which is like, he literally knows that he's just super empty. And he also says something like, I never cried and stuff like that, which just seems so ridiculous.
Yeah, he said like, so I never cried. So I guess I never felt a real sadness or stuff like that. It's really like detached from human living experience. Alive people who are breathing, people
Yeah.
do cry. Then you should go and cry some more. He definitely didn't cry up until, well, I guess if it was true that he didn't cry, he definitely was the only guy on earth who didn't cry till he died, because he
Did
died.
he cry when
Did
he
he
died?
he didn't cry.
Well, he didn't cry even then.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah, and to him, Haimi is really disposable, right? Like,
yeah.
in the beginning, we see him hanging out with his friends along with Haimi and Jisung. Jisung? What is it? Jisoo?
Jungsu? Come on.
Okay, okay. And so,
That's okay.
yeah, so we see that Haimi is really disposable to Ben, right? Because in the first part of the movie, we see Ben hanging out with his friends, as well as Haimi and Jungsu. And Haimi keeps on going on to this monologue about like how she watched the dance in Kenya, the dance of the Great Hunger, and Ben's just kind of looking at his friends, or just like he's just kind of scanning the environment, like, look what I brought to the table this time, you know? And at the end of the movie, we see him with another girl who's going on about this other monologue
It's the
about
same
Chinese
pattern.
people, right?
Yeah, it's the same
and it's just
pattern.
like he's showing his friends, look what kind of a girl I got now. In contrast, when we look at Jung-soo, Haimi is actually an enormous part of his life
It's
once
like a
she's
point
introduced.
of real
Yeah.
interest, almost.
Yeah, she occupies a huge part of his very barren life.
Yeah. Yeah, and then also the fact that like Ben is like yawning even when she's doing the great dance, and also like how people perceive her when she is showing a lot of like expressing a lot of her emotions. She lets it out. She cries, I don't know how many times. She cries a lot in the movie. She lets her emotions out, and for some reason it's almost like to those people, like Ben's friends, it's almost like a vulgar thing. They just
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, look at her, you know, with her petty little dance. And what else did you have on Ben?
On
Any other
Ben,
thoughts?
well,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to talk about him further on for sure, but I think we should leave it at that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Jung-soo.
Jung-soo.
What is your impression of Jung-soo? Would you go out with him?
Okay. Oh, I think he comes off as really closed person, like
Like,
not
closed
really,
off.
yeah, closed off person. So I'm not sure if my first thought would be wanting to go on a date. I don't think it would be. It's just if I get to know him a bit more, maybe.
Yeah.
But so Jung-soo definitely is kind of in a writer's block.
Yeah.
He's really in a deep writer's block, but at least one thing I kind of sense from his, like, he knows what he wants to do. Like, at least has a bit of a goal that Haimi perceives as meaningful, like becoming an author,
Yeah.
like writing. Haimi thinks, oh, that's really cool, right? That's interesting.
He's a lot less empty compared to Ben.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's not empty. His favorite author is like Faulkner, and like, you know, he's able to express his, like, I guess, experience too. Like when he says, oh, when I read Faulkner, like I can see myself in him. That's why I like him, right? So it's not as empty. He's not like an empty consumer of things. So
Yeah. I can.
would you go on a date with him?
I don't know. I think if I were Haimi, I would want to go on a date with him.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see the connection that they have, and
Yeah.
Haimi has a certain impression of Jung-soo, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we can talk more about that later. I think it's really interesting. Like, as I said, this movie, I think, has a lot of levels, like a lot of layers, right? On the surface level, I think the comparison between Ben and Jung-soo is made very clear. Like, you see this clear contrast between wealthy and not wealthy, urban and pastoral, and you also see the contrast between globalized versus constrained in the case of Jung-soo. And you also notice that, I guess, once you go a little bit deeper, you notice that while Ben's character is burning greenhouses for pleasure, Jung-soo's character has had to burn his mother's belongings due to him and his father's emotional pain, right?
Yeah.
So their struggle is completely different. I think we see a little bit of the contrast between the great hunger and then the small hunger as well. But I think as we just talked about Ben, we can see that once we unfold the layers of this movie a little bit more, we can see that Ben is someone who's really empty, whereas Jung-soo is someone who has a lot stronger convictions about life. I mean, based on the interviews that I saw of the director Lee Chang-dong, Jung-soo might be kind of based on Lee Chang-dong himself, because Lee Chang-dong's favorite author is Faulkner.
Yeah.
And Lee Chang-dong also says stuff like he appreciates the mystery of life and he wants to keep these mysteries as they are, which is why he didn't want to, turn this movie into something that has clear answers. And we mustn't forget, so the movie was roughly based off of two stories, right? Both of them about burning barns. And one of them was written by Haruki Murakami, and then the other one was written by the author mentioned throughout the movie, William Faulkner. So, I mean, Lee Chang-dong has said in interviews that this movie is kind of set in the world of Murakami, and he says that we're kind of living in the postmodernist world of Murakami, and that a lot of Korean audiences who are seeing this movie are probably participating in this Murakami world, whereas Lee Chang-dong seems to identify with Faulkner a bit more, and he says that I live the Murakami life, but I identify with Faulkner, and it seems like the character Jung-soo is also someone who identifies with Faulkner, and he perceives the world in a Faulkner kind of way, but in this movie he's inserted into this Murakami world, which is Ben's world.
Yeah, this Murakami or the postmodern world, just not a lot of things make sense, right? Like, one thing happens after another, and sometimes there's not a direct connection between the things, and you
Yeah.
can't really make up what just went on. It can be confusing, which also can be perceived as mysterious, right? Like that could be the quality to describe the kind of life. And again, like Chung Soo kind of strives to find a meaning.
Yeah.
And he is really kind of fed up with, I guess, how people are treated in this kind of like postmodern or like this Murakami world. When he is trying to get a job, like the person who's I guess
Yeah.
offering the job literally just keeps calling him number 3. Like, where do you
Yeah.
live? Number 3. It's kind of like really dehumanized, monotone, like world, and he despises it. You can like kind of see it from his reaction, and he doesn't like almost doesn't want to participate, but he has to participate in this world, right? Like he has to work, he has to do that, but he kind of despises the fact that he participates.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Faulkner's work, but I think Lee Chang-dong said in an interview that he sees Faulkner and Murakami as existing on the opposite ends of a spectrum in the way they present worlds and the way they perceive them, right? I think Faulkner is someone who has much stronger convictions. The subjects that he writes about are typically more underdogs of society, such as former slaves or descendants of slaves, and more working class people. And I think his works are a lot more set on defining, applying definitions to the plot elements. Whereas with Murakami, in the postmodern world, things are abstract and, it's open to interpretation. You kind of just see things as these mysterious beings, and you try to understand, try to make your own interpretation off of it. And yeah, I think indeed, like, the whole mystery of this whole movie has made that very clear.
Everything, I guess, when everything gets added up towards the end of the film, it becomes really abstract, and Jung Soo is kind of like, after Haimi disappears, he's really trying to pinpoint something down. He really wants to pinpoint something down, but he can't really find like what kind of conclusions or what kind of interpretations he can make. And in the end, obviously, you do have to make a choice about how you are going to interpret and find meaning in this really abstract world. And he does take an active step in defining what it is for him and like how he's going to act towards the end of the film. But at the beginning, he's really like passive.
He's very passive throughout like 90% of the movie, right?
I know.
But in the end, when he kills Ben, we see that like he's decided to take in a no bullshit approach to this whole thing. I mean, a lot of people can just be like, this is a mystery that can't be solved. I can't have any answers. I'm not gonna deal with this. But yeah, in the end, we really see him just perhaps taking the Faulkner approach.
Dealing with life with bare hands. I think, but we can talk more about the ending a bit later on. But what about Haimi? What did you think of Haimi?
Haimi's an interesting character for sure. In the beginning, I perceived her as teasing Jung-soo. And I guess she was.
She was. Yeah. She was really like teasing him.
Yeah, she was like, she know what she's doing. She's like, Jung-soo is like this guy who clearly really doesn't have that much going on in his life, aside from this whole farming thing and
his dad
dealing with his father. But Haimi is this like hot girl, and and like when she enters into Jung-soo's life, clearly she's going to occupy a lot in his life, and she asks him to take care of her dog.
You mean the cat?
The cat, sorry.
She's one thing that I really noticed is that she's really almost when she's with Jung-soo, I guess especially at the beginning, she was really straightforward and really inviting, which can really take a guy by surprise. Like, why is this girl so nice to me? That's kind of like that with that manic pixie dream girl archetype, right? Like this really like bubbly, like really interesting girl comes in and like she wants to give you all the attention, and the guy's just like, wow, what is going on?
He's into it too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You see how he smiles when he like
Yeah,
comes to meet her.
I know. Yeah, but it's also like the dynamic between them is pretty, like as you said, it's pretty balanced, and I kind of like that about them.
In the beginning, it's pretty balanced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When they were like smoking together, the conversation that happened between them is really natural, and which is might be why Haimi was like so eager to just kind of continue with him, right? Maybe the interaction was just really smooth and as she expected the first few interactions, so she was really like inviting, and she was really like open to bring him into her life. But
I thought Haimi was kind of like a blank canvas, and then she was kind of looking for her own meaning. And I feel like when she mentioned stuff like, oh, like I got plastic surgery, and like you called me ugly before and stuff like that, she was kind of searching for this new life.
It's almost like the saddest thing is, yes, I think she is searching for first and foremost maybe the meaning of life, and second of all, she's really lonely, really lonely. So she's looking for a connection, and I personally felt like she was looking for that connection from Jung-soo and also from Ben, but none were able to kind of give it to her in a way, and like her end result is just that she's really kind of, to me, I perceived her as just being really disappointed. Like it's just all the small hurtful things that Jung-soo says, and she obviously knows Ben, like why Ben is meeting her, right? Like she knows it, but she just goes along with it.
Yeah.
And it's just like deep down she's hurting a lot by the small gestures that is made by these two guys, especially Jung-soo, right? Jung-soo, we can talk about his mean comments.
Yeah.
That was mean.
Yeah, I think Haimi was kind of trying to fit into that perceived life that people like Ben live in. You know, like her going to Africa, her picking up these new interests.
Yeah, hobbies.
Yeah. It seemed like she wanted to live that sort of this free and like this great hunger life, you know, where she's searching for her meaning in life. But well, we know that she was struggling with her credit card debt, and like she didn't have she had a strained relationship with her family. So in a sense, her background is even, you know, actually more similar to Jung-soo's, and they're from the same town. So I think, yeah, in the truthful sense, Haimi and Jung-soo are more similar in where they're from, but Haimi's kind of trying to ascend that life.
Yeah, so why don't we talk about Jung-soo's his mean gestures towards Haimi, that Haimi was really hurt.
Yeah.
But you can just tell it by her expression.
I think the first one that I remember is when they were both on the balcony of Ben's apartment, and Jung-soo said something like, why do you think he's hanging out with you, right?
Yeah.
It's like he's basically implying that he's only hanging out with you to entertain himself. You're not really that important to him.
It's almost like suggestive, saying like, you know that you're not on his level, right? Almost like that, you know. The sub context underneath it is like that.
Yeah. And I guess the second time that Jung-soo has said something weird to her was when they all smoke pot, and, you know, caught in her emotions and I guess caught in the feeling of the moment, Haimi decides to do the dance that she's been talking about throughout the movie. And while she's doing that, she takes off her top, which was actually a moment of a good like expression for her. She was expressing her freedom, and after that was done, Jung-soo actually tells her, why did you take off your top, right? Like, why would you do that in front of men? Only whores do that.
Yeah. And I guess those are the two moments where he is directly really hurtful with his words vocally. And another time is when after the dinner, Ben asks Haimi, like, do you want me to take you home? And Haimi, before giving answer to Ben, she just looks at Jung-soo, almost like waiting for him to say something, maybe something along the lines of like, you can go with me. But obviously Jung-soo being kind of passive and maybe being like a little bit intimidated by Ben's presence, he doesn't kind of give the response that Haimi is expecting, and she keeps looking at him, and you can kind of tell from her body language that she does really want to, the person that she wants to go home was actually Jung-soo, not Ben. But yeah, so there's this small instances where Jung-soo is incapable of taking like an active involvement in the relationship or active steps to actually progress the relationship. And it's only up until Haimi disappears that Jung-soo kind of starts actually making moves.
Yeah. And I feel like after that comment when Jung-soo was like, only whores do that, I think Haimi doesn't even like look at him, right? She seems really disappointed, as you said. And
just goes into like Ben's car and just drives away. And that's the last time Jung-soo is ever going to see her.
Which is really sad.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because Jung-soo also disclosed that like he is in love with Haimi that night to Ben, not to her,
which is just super passive.
Yeah, so passive. Yeah, missed chance.
But I feel like even though Ben, like on the surface level, seems to be a bit more accepting of Haimi, like he doesn't say anything like that to Haimi, right? But I feel like that kind of represents like a superficial level of acceptance, because like I don't think that Ben is someone to be like, yeah, girl, take off your top, like sexual empowerment.
No, he's more like just watching her, observing her.
He just like, I think like Haimi finds comfort in Ben's lack of judgment, whereas Jung-soo is like really judgmental.
Yeah, and he can't hide it.
Yeah, which one might think is like Ben is a really non-judgmental guy, but I don't think that's the case. I think he's just like, as we described before, like that postmodern, like no interpretation, and like he just sees Haimi as some sort of like entertainment to him, right? But yeah, maybe we should talk about Haimi's disappearance.
Yeah, so Haimi's disappearance is, I guess, one of the mysteries of the movie, where you can make your own interpretation. So how did you kind of interpret her disappearance?
Well, I thought Ben killed her, and the reason why is because he literally had that collection of, I guess, items that he kept from women, and one of them was Haimi's watch, right? The pink watch that she got in the beginning of the movie, and also the fact that Haimi's cat was gone, but that like Ben had the exact same cat who was recognizing the name Boyle. And I feel like those are really strong evidences, so I kind of decided to take the no bullshit, like Faulkner approach.
Yeah, for me, I thought that Haimi's disappearance, I kind of thought of it in a more kind of like spiritual vanishment kind of way, not like a literal like her body getting killed or physically getting killed. And that's because, to me personally, I thought she was looking for something. She was maybe looking for a refuge or like a warmth in either of these men. And obviously Jung-soo would kind of take part as, it's like a familiar space, right? She couldn't find it from there, and then she also couldn't find it in a guy like Ben, who's exciting and who's, I guess, representative of the life that she wanted to occupy or be part of. And because like she couldn't find anything, and even after she went to Kenya, right? I don't think she found the answers that she was looking for. That's the kind of conclusion I made. So after all this search, and after like kind of all the disappointments that she endured from either sides of all the relationships that she had, not just Jung-soo and Ben, also her family too. So based on that, I felt like her spirit was dead. that's why she just kind of vanished away. It's like there's no point in her being in their lives anymore. She already almost like, to me, only to me, made the conclusion that this is not where I would find what I'm looking for. So maybe she's looking for it in a different place. So I guess you could call that more of the Murakami approach.
Yeah, maybe her death was like symbolic in the movie, right?
Yeah, that's how I kind of interpreted her disappearance.
Yeah, I guess in the physical realm, like maybe she wasn't dead, maybe anything could have happened to her, but I guess the movie didn't really want to explore that any further. It's just that she disappeared. As we were talking about how Haimi was kind of trying to make this transition between these two worlds, these two South Koreas, we said earlier, like before this podcast, that maybe her attempt to transition from the old world into the new world was kind of fruitless, right? Because if in the new world, if she finds someone like Ben, someone super hollow and empty, and if that's what this world represents, then she really has nowhere to go.
Yes, and she's not like that. Like she's not like that. Yeah, so she can't. I don't think she can be fully accepted in that world, even if she tried.
Yeah, so maybe she had like some sort of symbolic disappearance at the intersection of these two worlds.
Yeah. Yes, she made an attempt, but the attempt didn't give any result. Well, I guess she managed, but yeah. So after Haimi's disappearance, so now we can kind of go on to talk about the ending of the movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what did you think of the ending scene? Or just kind of like Jung-soo's kind of progression towards that final scene.
Yeah, Jung-soo was taking actions. He was like looking at all the greenhouses.
Running every morning.
He was stalking Ben's character.
That stalking was creepy.
And it was really obvious. Like, Ben would clearly be able to identify his truck, right?
Yeah, that truck is white. Like, it's white, super big. And obviously it's like in the neighborhood.
He's just like driving around Gangnam and trying to stalk Ben, which is just super obvious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when I was first watching the movie, I think I was surprised by the fact that Jung-soo killed Ben. I didn't expect that from him because, you know, he comes off as someone who's just really passive. It's also ironic because in the beginning of the movie, we find him talking about his father in a really disdainful way. He says like, my father has anger issues, like I don't know, he says something like,
a lot of rage inside. Yeah, and his father is like on trial for hurting like a police officer's hand, or and he doesn't want to turn out like his dad, but the ironic thing is that he turns out exactly or even worse than his father, and the fact that he uses a knife from his father's collection to kill Ben. To me, I almost thought that because Jung-soo was so fixated on Ben, almost obsessed in a way, right? Even when Haimi and all of those three are together, Jung-soo spends more time looking and observing Ben, right? What he's doing, what he's saying, and all of that. And there's like this fixation on Ben that because there's no common ground for them, because Ben says that the only time that he feels the bass in his heart is when he burns greenhouses, right? And later, after Haimi's disappearance, when Jung-soo attends the party at Ben's place and decides to leave early, Ben kind of just like teases him and says something like, you should enjoy life more, which obviously pisses off Jung-soo. He's not in the state to enjoy things at the moment. His love interest literally vanished away. But that comment and the fact that Jung-soo kills him at the end is almost like, because Jung-soo made that conclusion that Ben killed Haimi, which in Ben's story would be the greenhouse that he burns. Because of that, I almost felt like, could Jung-soo be like emulating Ben in a way, maybe wanting to feel what he felt? So to me, in a way, maybe it was like one state of mind where Jung-soo felt like there would be some kind of common ground and some kind of like way to relate to him or like feel what he
Yeah.
was feeling through that action. So that's how I kind of processed the ending.
It's again, it's ironic.
Yeah, it's so.
I think
Yeah.
even if he wasn't exactly taking a hint from Ben to do some killing, I think it's pretty interesting that the filmmakers make sure to put the killing after he says, "Feel a bass in your heart." That's what killing is associated with
Yeah.
in this movie.
And then also like another thing about I guess the ending is that, you know, Ben is always saying things like, I like to burn greenhouses, I like to do this, right? And in the end, Jung-soo is the one who's actually doing all the, I guess, actions of the things mentioned. He literally commits homicide and then becomes an arsonist because he sets Ben on fire, literally in his car. So in the end, John has kind of like, no, Jung-soo, not John. Jung-soo kind of literalizes Ben's ideas.
Yeah, I thought it was satisfying because I think Jung-soo's rage towards Ben wasn't just like on a personal level. I think it was a rage towards that sort of environment and that sort of state that South Korea is in, and
Yeah.
that sort of state that Lee Chang-dong is describing, right? So I guess it's a happy ending.
Yeah, yeah. In a way, he takes an active role to destroy it with his bare hands, because Ben is a guy that kind of represents capitalism and like that kind of progress, right? All the
Yeah.
development progress, kind of dehumanized way of kind of living and
Yeah.
interacting, and then another interesting thing that I noticed from the ending scene is like, when after Jung-soo kind of knifes Ben, I don't know how many times, so many times.
Yeah.
There's almost like that scene of Ben holding on to Jung-soo is almost like a hug. It's kind of weird. Like, it's not weird, but I guess it's kind of like you can interpret it as a hug because it's like Ben is holding so dearly onto him, almost like embrace, right? Maybe that's the only moment where Ben felt alive, you know?
Oh, probably.
Yeah. As the man said himself, he never cried in his life. Didn't even cry when he died. So
Yeah.
yeah, probably only time he was like, wow, this emotions. It's more than the blast in my that I felt from burning greenhouses or whatever.
Yeah. Do you remember that article that said something like Lee Chang-dong is still angry at, I guess, current state of life that young people had to struggle through? And like, in the beginning of the movie, when Jung-soo is watching TV, we hear news people saying something like the unemployment rate of South Koreans is like increasing or something like that.
Yeah, in the youth population, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it kind of, I guess, speaks for like young people's rage in a way, because based on what I read about South Korea, it seems like it's really an environment where it's difficult to climb the social ladder, which it is in, like in most places, but South Korea is pretty notorious for having someone's entire destiny just be determined by, like, let's say their academic performance in high school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then climbing a social ladder, especially if you're coming from like a small town, let's say, it's kind of expected of you, and that's what your parents are almost wanting you to do. And so there's a lot of expectation on that part. And also I think in a way, not only just like young people's rage, but also like their confusion in just this world. It's like they're 20, they're so young, and literally just graduated university, you know, trying to make a living. And it is a confusing world. Like after you graduate from university, life feels really big, and I guess not big, it just feels really open. There's just a lot of I guess like roads that you can take, and it's kind of like the thought process of like, why am I doing this, like what's the point, what's the meaning, dealing with that internally, and then also having to go out and interact with people and like work. All that is it's hard, I would say. It's hard
for sure.
on young people. Yeah.
I like that Jung-soo's character is kind of his confusion and his rage is kind of symbolic of all of that, I think.
Yeah.
Because he, like, next to Ben, he's pretty helpless, you know?
Yeah.
He can't even tell the girl that he likes her.
Yes.
He just so intimidated by this dude.
Yeah. And then also, like, what I felt also kind of sad about is just kind of how Amy is just perceived by both of these men. To me, it felt like Amy, in a lot of the parts of the movie, and there was only a few moments where, like, Amy was kind of really expressing herself,
Yeah.
on a personal level, or like really from herself. Whereas in a lot of the interactions and a lot of the scenes, it's always just kind of like she's either in the frame with Ben or either in the frame with Jung-soo, and it's just kind of like she's this almost like a pigment of imagination that these two men have, obviously two different versions, and it's just kind of like bouncing between them, you know. It's almost like Amy is not real.
Amy's definitely not a perfect character. She's like really misunderstood, but it also kind of seems like she's trying to fill the void inside of her,
Yeah.
possibly with like Jung-soo, and like just the fact that she keeps seeing Ben, right? I guess for the sake of this movie she has to, but I think that's a common situation that a lot of women can face.
Yeah, and then I guess the glimpses that we get from her, I guess how her family is like, you know, when Jung-soo goes out to find Amy's mom, they say things like, oh, she probably lied to you, she's like a good storyteller.
Oh yeah.
Right? So you can kind of get the sense that maybe her family was not used to or didn't really see Amy the way she is.
Yeah.
Right? So she obviously didn't get that kind of acceptance from her family. And then the fact that Jung-soo called her ugly, and then the fact that like she went up to get surgery, plastic surgery, and there's a lot of things that she, I guess, does to get accepted and to find something, I guess, in men. Sometimes, I guess, people do try to fill the void with men.
People have been known to try to fill the
yeah,
void with
they've
men.
been known to try. I can't say 100%, but I've heard people do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that Jung-soo is not a completely perfect or likable character either. It's not like the filmmaker has some sort of moral story to tell and he's
Yeah.
trying to tell that story through Jung-soo, right? He's clearly like a misogynist and like
Yeah, really clumsy.
I guess that's his flaw.
Yeah, clumsy, passive. Yeah, he's a handsome actor, not a good character in the movie.
He's a great actor, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, his like acting is superbly good. It's like the expressions that he makes is just like,
I know.
wow. Like
How
yeah.
can someone act so like subtly, right?
Yeah,
That's
apparently
so
like
intentionally.
the director like knew it from the beginning that he was gonna be the main character, and Steven Yeun kind of entered the picture like
Yeah.
a later, and Amy was a new up and coming actor that didn't have any.
She didn't have any like
Yeah,
on-screen experience apparently,
Yeah,
right?
and
But
they're all
yeah.
so good.
Yeah, all three of them really bodied their roles.
Yeah, yeah. It was a really good experience, the whole movie. I think that's
Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it. So thanks for listening to our second episode. We hope to see you another time. We don't know what other movie we're gonna make a commentary on.
yeah.
Maybe
We're not sure.
we're thinking either Camera Buff or
I don't know.
okay.
Camera Buff is good, so maybe. But thanks for tuning in, and thanks for staying till the end.
Yeah.
If you stayed till now. Okay.
Okay, see ya. Bye.